Yeah, we think about lots of different kinds of companies to work with. So some of it is for companies who might have needs for the kinds of stuff that we're actually doing. So it might be a textbook company that says, hey, we really have a big gap in some of our educational media. How do we fill that gap? It might be other organizations who say, I really like the idea of what you're doing, and I'm willing to sort of support the sort of underlying technologies to be able to help advance that. So we worked with, for example, a group in the medical industry to essentially do the same kind of games that we do in high schools, but do it at a level that addresses professional education, but uses the same underlying technologies is another way to think about that. And then there's also sort of the pipeline. So as we think about a lot of the companies, some of the biotech companies, some of the technology companies in the area, and we think about, okay, they know that they need a workforce that's ready to sort of tackle the problems of tomorrow. And some of those companies are saying, okay, great, let's work with you to be able to maybe brand a product and be able to work with you to be able to find a good audience that's able to think about the kinds of problems that we're thinking about and ultimately prepare them for the workforce maybe in 5 or 10 years down the road. I think when we're looking for partners and when partners are looking for us, I think in many cases what makes those successful is obviously when we have our goals that are aligned. But in many ways, sometimes the processes, the ways that we want to get to those goals don't have to necessarily start being aligned. We do think about, sometimes we're looking for basically continuing products that we've already developed. In other cases, we're interested in talking to partners who have ideas. They want to prepare the STEM workforce for tomorrow, but they're not really sure how they want to get there. We want to do the same thing. And there may be ways that we can work together to be able to sort of bring about those goals. So it's maybe about a game around a particular industry issue that you're facing. So maybe it's about genetic engineering. You want to feel like you want to get your community to really able to understand what genetic engineering is, and we can do games that really engage people in those ideas. Maybe it's about an event that we can do. We've done alternate reality games, these games that sort of pretend not to be games, that sort of go on for 4, 6, 8 weeks or something like that. It could be around an issue, could be around, we've worked with the Smithsonian, for example, around issues around the climate, on things like that. So in many cases, it's actually not necessarily sort of just picking up a product where we left off, but thinking about ways that we can sort of get to the same places together. The technology that we can use in some of the work today is stuff that really just seemed like a dream just a few years ago, and importantly, it's becoming commoditized. So, virtual reality, for example, has been around for dozens of years, but it's really only now that it's become something that we think that actually kids or schools might have access to. And still now, it's maybe a little bit on the expensive side, but we really see that coming down rapidly in price in the next year or two. And the kind of timeline we think about within my lab is we think about things that are either somewhere between today and 5 years from today. We don't tend not to think about things that are like 20 years out, and that's not the place we do a lot of our work, but we think about things in those next few years. So we're working on things in virtual reality right now. We think that's an exciting space to be in. So we're doing virtual reality around science education. I think there's some really important concepts that we can address particularly well in that medium that we can't in others. And we've been doing augmented reality for many years. And really now it's becoming quite scalable in terms of the way we think about doing that kind of work. Machine learning is becoming a part of everything, including our work in education and how we can create better systems that respond to student needs, student understanding based on some of those technologies. So those are all things that we feel like are important in applying in our work. And again, we're interested in partners who sort of, maybe it's a company that sort of has particular technologies and machine learning we think can be applied to education, or everybody's looking for the holy grail of virtual reality, and we think we have some interesting ideas around sort of scale and different concepts within virtual reality that we think can be uniquely applied to education. One of the important points about the work that we do within my lab is we do have a lot of emphasis on educational technology, and a lot of times people sort of see that as a teacher replacement. We really think about it as a part of the ecosystem, and teachers are also a really important part of that ecosystem. So when we think about technologies, we don't think about things that are going to replace teachers, but things that actually help teachers where they really have deep needs. So it might be about how do they address particular concepts. It might be about how do they understand the amounts of data that are coming in from their students. Those are the kinds of problems that we try to face. And we really try to bring teachers into that mix very quickly as we think about solving those problems. So we bring teachers early on to our design processes to help us think about, are these actually problems that you really face? Or are we just making these things up? How can we actually better meet your needs? How do we work this into the workflow of school and your context? So we really think about bringing teachers into that process early on, and we think about how we're going to actually, when we scale some of these things, we think about what's the teacher learning, what's the teacher capacity that we need to help develop in both sort of professional development context as well as an administrative context. Sometimes they just need space to experiment, need space to explore. How do we think about the administrative needs that we can help serve to enable them to do that?